And we're back with Brian Keane, who is a multi-business owner. He's had some amazing franchises in the past, and I can't wait to have a conversation with him about franchising. But Brian, tell us more about the businesses that you have at the moment.
Oh, well, the main business, which is our sort of driver and our focus and where our passion is really, is Franchise Simply. That's a business that we started, my wife Prue and I started in 2011. We'd retired actually, got bored very quickly, and been involved in franchising for 30 years, have a passion for it. And that was behind getting Franchise Simply up and running. We decided to try and create a model that was unique and a much more modest investment to get a really great outcome for small businesses that wanted to grow using the franchise model. So that's a bit of a background on Franchise Simply.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so you've been in the franchise world for a long time now, haven't you? Can you give us a bit of background of how you started in franchising?
Yeah, certainly. I'm actually a registered builder, but in the late 80s, early 80s, I beg your pardon, late 70s, early 80s, there was really a big financial upheaval across Australia, and interest rates were running along at 18% for a domestic mortgage and as much as 23 for property development. And I was doing a bit of property development then, and the market just went backwards. So I decided to close the business down and looked around at all sorts of things. And the business broker, Jimmy Goodwin in Perth, who's still out there and very active, great broker, I got him to look around for me. And I said to him in response to one question, I said, no, I'm not interested in a franchise, to be honest with you. I think I can run the business. Just give me a business I can run. And he, after looking at a few, he showed me a sheet of paper, whited out the name of the business, and the trading figures looked great. I said, yeah. He said, I'll take you to see it. And he drove me to Claremont in Perth, where we were living, spent 20 years there. And it was a bed shed. Now, bed shed is predominantly a Perth-based, well, it is a Perth-based business, expanded a bit into the eastern states, but not hugely. But I was about the fifth franchisee, and I went into the business, and lo and behold, I ended up selling beds for 5 years, and I had 7 outlets. So,
Wow, mate, that's
that,
impressive.
yeah, really got me into franchising. So I was an early multi-unit franchisee, I suppose. And then from there, we went on with a colleague to start a consulting business, and that was the evolution, I suppose, of ultimately Franchise Simply was the sort of culmination of all those things.
That's I love. I think it's the recruiter in me. I love hearing the story, the backstory of people, how they get into something. And I thought that was so funny, the fact that you didn't want a franchise, and they're on and the guy's on the piece of paper, he's whited out the name, so you had no idea what it was. Because at the end of the day, as a business and entrepreneur, yes, we want to understand what the business is, but it's the figures that make the most difference, right? And it doesn't matter what the business is, because if the business is making money, we want to be part of that. And I guess he was showing you that by taking the name out, because you were so adamant about not about franchising that he ended up with 7. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, I became a bit of a tragic. But I was stunned actually going from having a conventional business, and I really dismissed franchising. But what I found very quickly, there were some key elements to it which are quite unique, and we still apply today. And people just don't appreciate the camaraderie and the mutual support amongst franchisees, let alone from the franchisor, is quite extraordinary. Plus, also the way that you can, reduce your costs so significantly with collective bargaining, if you like, with your suppliers and so forth. It was a fantastic experience. And I met and got into business with other people who were in the bedshed group as well, like Brian Cummins, the founder of Cash Converters. We were in a business together for a while, and we did all sorts of things. We had numerous businesses in that entrepreneurial period through the mid late 80s, when in Australia there was, I suppose, the beginning of not exactly high tech, but yeah, underwater painting and all those sorts of things. Lots of creative and inventive things coming out, and we got into quite a few of those. It was a stimulating period, I've got to say. It was a lot of fun.
it definitely sounds it. And if there was someone listening to this show right now and they were considering or contemplating buying a franchise, what 3 tips would you give them to be able to go and do that successfully?
All right, okay. So buying a franchise as a prospective franchisee,
Yeah.
well, I think speak to franchisees. That's
Yeah.
probably key. Speak to as many as you can in the system, whether they whether they've been very successful, whether they haven't done, and assess it, and just assess for yourself, if you were in their shoes with your skill sets and your background, would it suit you? So that's one thing, without any doubt. Have a look around as well and look at the competition, look at where the group is, look at its history. You know, how has it been around for a long time? Has it had lots of changes of ownership? Are the owners of the franchise, the franchisors, are they committed? You know, that's really important. I've got a particular thing about investment bankers and so forth getting involved in franchising, and it happens from time to time. They buy a group, and it's happened, you know, with Dick Smiths, it happened with Retail Food Group. I mean, if you don't know of those, they were sort of listed companies, and investors got in, and all they did was suck out dividends every year, didn't support the franchisees, and it was criminal. Unfortunately, they were never taken to task sufficiently because they'd built walls around themselves with various companies and trusts and overseas registrations. But just my advice would be avoid those sorts of businesses, generally speaking. I mean, there are exceptions, you know, but and then I suppose the third one is, if you can, well, make sure you speak to the franchisor in depth. If he doesn't ask you penetrating personal questions about your goals, your ambitions, your longer term goals, then I would say that he's being fairly shallow, because you do want to avoid, in any business or relationship, people are just looking for the short-term return. You know, do they just want to get a sale? Are they more like real estate agents, just wanting to get the sale and get the commission? They've got to be interested in you and your long-term commitment. What's your driver? What's your why? You know, we come back to Simon Sinek, one of our favorites.
All the time. Yeah.
1989 or something. No, 1999. That was from Simon Sinek. So, yeah. So that's three questions I would definitely ask. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, if we're a business and we want to franchise our business, what is the point where we should be considering that? Is there a mark in the sand that we can go, okay, well, I feel like this could be a good way? And what's your experience with that side of things?
Yeah, look, I think it's a question almost every business owner needs to ask themselves. And look, we've dealt helping people franchise their business, which is our focus. We used to help recruit franchisees or sell franchises many years ago, but we're out of that space today. But if you're looking to grow your business, you need to look at the options. You know, do you get another shareholder in? Do you borrow money? Do you get your staff to make an investment? All those sorts of options. And do you franchise your business? Or if you do want to grow it using other parties, do you actually franchise a business, which means getting franchisees to come in as investors who basically give you working capital? And that's one of the key things. But I suppose from the other point of view, it's really a matter of, sorry, I didn't realize it. You'll have to edit this bit out, I'm afraid. My phone's off. But
you're totally fine. We're not going to edit it. It's all good, mate. Honestly, we're just going to carry on through. This is just life.
Turn my WhatsApp off. Sorry, I just got a ping came through.
You're totally fine, mate.
This is live. There you are.
It is. It's it. It's a raw conversation.
Yeah. So the point is to learn a bit about franchising. Most people think to understand franchising. We've all been to Hungry Jack's and McDonald's, and we know, a number of Brumbies and those sorts of people. But learn about the first principles, because I suppose 20% of the businesses we've helped to franchise have actually adopted that concept from a concept point of view before they've even launched the business. So you launch it with everything in place. So the key is to do a little bit of study. And I think, one way of doing that, in fact, I've got the answer. I've read the book.
well, let's segue that in right now. What's the book called? How can we get the book? How can we get all this information?
It's very simple. How to Franchise My Business Simply.
There you go. Beautiful.
It's 130 pages, and I've written it in response to the questions I've been asked over the years. They're the sorts of questions that a lot of people ask. So they're very, from my point of view, been able to write a chapter on things about territories and all those sorts of things, so that people understand the value. But also, the thing is, it raises points often which people haven't thought about. And that's, I think, the biggest thing in learning anything. It's discovering the little, behind the nooks and the crannies. What are the points you're not aware of that we actually need to be aware of? And so that's the book. You can get it from my website, franchisesimply.com.au, so you can order a free copy. It's a hard copy. We've got soft copy as well, but we'll happily mail out a hard copy for you, so you can, get your post-it notes and your highlight pen and scribble through it, all the rest of it. Which, and then from there on, if you want to learn a little bit more, you're welcome to get in touch, and we obviously give you an opportunity to do that. There's also weekend workshops we run. We get a lot of people come to those from all sorts of backgrounds, people in business, lawyers, accountants who want to find out what franchising is really like on the dark side, if you like.
Yeah, there's two sides to every story, right?
Well, there are. Yeah, there are, absolutely. And, we won't go on to one of my favorite topics, which is the limited knowledge, practical knowledge of accountants and lawyers when it comes to business. But we'll pass on that one for the moment. I don't want to take the whole show.
It's a whole conversation, that one, on a different time, right?
Yeah. But again, what they need to do, and I can certainly introduce them to people like themselves who've been through that process and I suppose have addressed it and met the challenges, found the benefits, whatever it might be, and that gives people an idea of what it might be like for them.
And there's pros and cons to everything in life. Should I go and franchise? Should I not? There's pros and cons of franchising. There's pros and cons to not. So you just got to educate yourself, and at the end of the day, make that everything's a risk, but you want to mitigate that risk, and and you just got to go and give it a go, right? But we're going to come back to Brian after these 4 tracks, which are going to be, Brian, do you want to introduce the next 4 tracks for us?
Yeah, certainly. Look, one that I remember well before I was born in the outskirts of London, West London, and one of the I suppose rising stars in the earlier days of pop music in the late 60s, early 70s was Cat Stevens. And he was an early sort of folkish pop singer, if you like. It was sort of a new emerging sort of sector, I suppose. And what I've got here is Morning Has Broken. It's just a very nice, catchy tune. And you can never be unhappy listening to that, or if you are feeling a bit flat, it's always something to give you a little bit of a lift without necessarily having to have a rousing chorus,
Yes.
That's Cat Stevens, and I still like his stuff today. The second one is Chicago, If You Leave Me Now. I love Chicago. If I was stuck on a desert island, they're one of the groups that I would have to listen to, and providing I had a solar record player or whatever it might be. But I've followed their stuff right from the beginning. And If You Leave Me Now is the track I've nominated because it's I suppose it's everything about Chicago. The way it's got their rhythm, great vocals, and their brass section as well. So I love that one. It's great. That's my Friday afternoon music. I stick on at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon.
Nice.
And listen to a bit of Chicago blasting the airwaves, and that winds me up for the week. And then and then an amazing artist, David Bowie. Is extraordinary. Having watched videos of him producing discs, records, and so forth, and his capacity to just write things very, very quickly. Some of his unique sort of sounds and so on. So I've chosen Changes, which was a little bit unusual because it's a sort of almost a stuttering sort of vocal. Change. I quite like that one. And then the next one is ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. I love their stuff. It's just great. I've never seen them in a live concert, but I can imagine in a large arena, Electric Light Orchestra would be fantastic. They're a great sound. So Don't Bring Me Down is the one I've chosen there. So most of my titles sort of relate, I suppose, as most music does, to sort of lifting music and inspiring stuff, and a little bit of I suppose an anthem sometimes that you might like. So
I find it so interesting with music that we interpret it how we feel about it. It might not necessarily be the right way that person who wrote it or sings it it's not related to that. So sometimes we might find a song very happy, but the song is actually very sad, but we relate it to different parts of our life, don't we? And so that's why music can be very powerful, and you can play something that can make someone cry, or you can play something that makes someone happy, but it all depends on their relationship to that song. But we're going to come back with Brian. We're going to come back with some more music, and we'll see you soon.